Several videos back, I made a video using the Chase Bliss Mood pedal, which has a feature on it that's essentially like a granular style looper. You can get some really great, interesting sounds from it. I did a whole video on it and how it was really inspiring. Around that same time, I was reading this book right here, Listen Up by Mark Howard. If you're not familiar with Mark Howard, he's essentially an engineer-producer who has worked with tons of legendary artists, as well as working a great deal with Daniel Lanois. Both Mark Howard and Lanois use a lot of looping and delay style looping in their production techniques. And I've always been a huge Lanois fan and a fan of his productions. So that coupled with exploring this mood pedal and reading Mark's book, all kind of got my mind going down this looping, rabbit trail. This is the Gibson Echoplex Digital Pro Plus. In its most basic form, it's a looper. It records CD quality audio at 44.1, 16-bit, and offers up to 198 seconds of loop time that can be divided into multiple loops. Some other feature highlights include reverse, half speed, undo, a multi-switch controller, full MIDI capability, and sync, a multiply feature which allows short loop cycles to be copied over into longer loops, and adjustable feedback for the loop. The Gibson Echoplex Digital Pro, or EDP for short, started out as a unit called the loop delay. This was invented by Matthias Grob and initially released in 1993. Matthias was inspired by early delay rack units such as the TC Electronics 2290 and the Lexicon PCM42. Shortly after the release of the loop delay, Gibson approached Matthias about licensing the technology. The design was improved upon, and under its Oberheim division, Gibson released the first Echoplex Digital Pro. In 2001, it was rebranded under the Gibson name. In 2002, there was a substantial software upgrade to the Loop 4 software, and beginning in 2003, all new units shipped with the Loop 4 software, as well as got the word plus added to the name. Unfortunately, in 2007, Gibson discontinued the EDP. So I want to talk a little more about some of the unique features of the EDP, but before I get into that, I want to say that I'm still learning this machine. It's really complex, there's a lot to it, and I'm by no means an expert on it. I do think it's worth mentioning one person specifically who has created a pretty spectacular canon of information on the EDP, and that's a gentleman named LaFosse. I hope I'm saying that right. I have linked his website as well as his YouTube page below in the description. He has created hours and hours of content on YouTube explaining all the ins and outs of the EDP and the Loop 4 software, as well as really interesting, great original music and just philosophical wanderings on the EDP and its uses and all of this stuff. It's all really great. It's all really well done and well explained. So if you're interested in the EDP whatsoever, definitely go check out his stuff. Check out his original music. I owe a ton to him in my journey of the EDP and learning about it and learning how to use it. Now, this unit is kind of a live looping device, but it also has a lot of other capabilities, and that's really what interests me more, is using it within my production style, using it as a tool in the studio. I don't see myself doing a lot of live looping, but as kind of an exploratory, textural type tool for the studio, and even just something to get the juices flowing on new ideas, it seems to be a great solution for that, or a great tool to be able to explore some different ideas and textures. So earlier I mentioned a lot of the main features of the Echoplex, and a lot of those aren't necessarily unique to this unit, especially nowadays with tons of other loopers being around and people approaching looping in different ways. But I think that one thing that makes the EDP really interesting and really unique is how it approaches some of the functionality and some of the options that you have with the user interface. One of the interesting user interface things that I'm talking about here is the idea of turning different functions into what they call sus functions. Really, this is kind of the idea of a momentary switch. So rather than hitting record to turn it on and then hitting record again to stop the recording, the function is only happening as long as you have the button pressed down. So if we push that button very quickly, then we get a very, very small loop. Now, this also works for some of the other functions like overdub or some of the different insert modes. Here's what some of those sound like. This one aspect obviously gives us the ability to create really unique rhythmic textures and just kind of glitchy sounding stuff that's really interesting, especially considering that this unit is, almost 20 years old. So I mentioned this earlier, but one other interesting thing about the EDP are the insert modes. Insert modes are essentially ways of adding different content to the loops, and it goes about doing this in a few different ways, but some are pretty straightforward while others are a little more on the creative side. They add different textures in different ways. One other thing that's really unique about the EDP is a feature that's called loop windowing. Now, rather than try to explain this, I'm just going to let you guys hear an example of it. Andre has a great video about it that I have linked in the description below. So as you can tell, the EDP is a really interesting piece of gear. It can work very simply, or you can really dive into it and do lots of interesting things in lots of different ways. I really feel like I've only scratched the surface in all that it can do and ways that it can manipulate different sounds and textures and all of that. So I'm looking forward to diving in even more. I understand that's not going to be for everybody. I just find it really interesting. It's something that I didn't know much about, and I've kind of jumped in head first to learn about it and to learn how to create with it. Even as advanced as a lot of looper pedals are and a lot of different effects pedals are nowadays, I don't know that I've come across anything that does what this unit does, and that's really impressive. I mean, the people who created this and worked on it and helped design it and designed it and everything, like, they just have thought about all of this stuff in a much different way than I've seen any other manufacturer do, which is really just inspiring in and of itself. I really wanted to make this video to highlight the EDP and hopefully give a concise glimpse and overview into the microcosm that it encapsulates. If you have any questions about it, or you're an EDP user, leave me a comment. Definitely check out some of the links in the description below. I will be linking tons of other info and other videos on this thing, just so that anybody who watches this video can find some other great sources and more first-hand sources on this unit. All right, as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you out there.